An American woman cloned her dead dog and bitterly regretted it. The sterile white walls of the cryogenics facility hummed with a low, expectant vibration. In her hands, Victoria Johnson, a 48-year-old graphic designer from Seattle, held a small, cold capsule. Inside, stored at a precise -196 degrees Celsius, were tissue samples from her beloved Shih Tzu, Oliver. The grief was still a raw, physical ache in her chest, a constant companion since that bleak December day when cancer had finally won its long battle. Now, standing at the frontier of science and sorrow, she believed this capsule held not just cells, but a promise, a chance to turn back time. She was about to become one of the few private individuals in the world to clone a deceased pet. It was a decision she would later describe as the most profound mistake of her life, a $50,000 lesson in the immutable nature of love and loss. Part 1. The Center of the Universe. For 15 years, Oliver had been the warm, beating heart of Victoria's quiet world. He was not merely a pet. He was her confidant through a divorce, her joyful companion during her freelance career worked from a sunlit home office, the living, breathing soul of her house. A Shih Tzu of particular charm, he had a distinctive black and white mask-like face, one ear that flopped forward endearingly, and a specific, ridiculously dignified way of sitting with his paws crossed. His personality was a unique alchemy, stubborn yet deeply empathetic, aloof with strangers, but capable of gazing at Victoria with an unsettling depth of understanding. He loved the crinkle of a cheese wrapper, hated the rain with a passion, and had a particular spot on the lavender sofa he claimed as his throne. Their bond was a tapestry of a million tiny, mundane threads. The morning ritual of preparing his kibble with a sprinkle of chicken, the weight of him on her feet as she worked, the soft snore that echoed in the silence of the night. He was in every sense her family. His decline was slow and cruel. The diagnosis of lymphoma at age 14 plunged Victoria into a world of vet visits, chemotherapy protocols, and heartbreaking hope. She spent her savings on treatments, chasing extra months. When the vet finally advised palliative care, she dedicated herself to making his final weeks perfect. He passed peacefully in her arms, wrapped in his favorite blanket. The silence that followed was deafening, a void that seemed to swallow all light and warmth. The empty food bowl, the unused leash by the door, the absence of the clicking of nails on hardwood, each was a fresh stab of pain. Friends suggested she get another dog, but to Victoria, that felt like betrayal. She didn't want a dog. She wanted her dog, her Oliver. In the depths of her grief, scrolling through memories on her phone, an advertisement algorithm served her a story she wasn't prepared to hear, an article about a celebrity who had cloned their dog. The concept, which she had vaguely associated with Dolly the sheep and sci-fi movies, was presented as an available, albeit expensive, service. A frantic, desperate Google search began. She found companies, primarily based in Texas and South Korea, offering pet cloning. Their websites were sleek, filled with testimonials and scientific jargon that spoke of preserving the genetic legacy and bringing your companion back. Driven by a grief that blurred logic, she contacted the most prominent firm. A consultant, whose voice was soothing and reassuring, explained the process. Time was of the essence. They needed viable somatic cells, ideally taken before death or immediately after. In a panic, Victoria called her vet. Oliver's body, thankfully, was still at the clinic, awaiting cremation. For an exorbitant fee, a courier was dispatched to collect tissue samples from his ear and belly, rushing them to a specialized lab to be flash frozen. The first step, the $1,500 biobank preservation, was done. She had bought a chance. For weeks, she wrestled with the $50,000 price tag, her entire bonus and a significant chunk of her savings. She rationalized it. It was the cost of a new car, a once-in-a-lifetime trip. What was money compared to the return of a soul? The consultant gently managed expectations. You will get a genetic twin, a puppy that will look remarkably similar and share predispositions, but personality is shaped by environment, experience, and the unknowable spark of life. He will be his own individual. Victoria heard only what she wanted to hear. Look remarkably similar. She envisioned Oliver's puppyhood, the chance to relive it, to correct minor regrets, to have him back from the very start. She signed the contract, initiating the complex, clandestine biology. The science was a roller coaster of hope and despair. The nucleus from Oliver's preserved cell needed to be inserted into a donated, enucleated dog egg. This reconstructed embryo then had to be stimulated to divide. It failed. Twice. The emails from the lab were clinical. The first transfer to the surrogate was not successful. The second surrogate did not maintain pregnancy. Each message felt like a small death. Victoria began to wonder if the universe was telling her no. But with the third attempt, success. A healthy surrogate beagle in a secretive facility was pregnant. For Victoria, the months of waiting were filled with a strange, anxious anticipation, different from the pure joy of expecting a random puppy. This was a targeted resurrection. Part 3. The Uncanny Valley of the Heart. On November 24, 2025, Victoria flew to a nondescript office building on the outskirts of Dallas. In a small, sterile room, a technician brought in a wriggling bundle. Her breath caught. The puppy, a tiny Shih Tzu with a black and white coat, the same markings, the same dark, liquid eyes, was undeniably, physically, Oliver. She named him Ollie, a diminutive that felt both familiar and necessary to create distance. The first weeks were a confusing swirl of exhaustion and eerie familiarity. Ollie looked like Oliver's ghost in puppy form. His fur had the same texture, his bark was a familiar, high-pitched yap, but the cracks in the fantasy began to appear almost immediately. Oliver had been calm and reserved as a puppy. Ollie was a tornado of nervous energy, chewing everything in sight. Oliver took to housebreaking easily. Ollie was stubbornly resistant. Oliver loved carrots. Ollie spat them out. The physical resemblance was a mirror, but the reflection was wrong. The most profound dissonance, however, was emotional. With Oliver, every interaction was layered with 15 years of shared history. His gaze felt knowing. With Ollie, Victoria found herself staring into those identical eyes, desperately searching for a sign of recognition, of the old soul she had paid to retrieve. She saw only the blank, curious slate of a newborn animal. The bond she had expected to feel instantly, a rekindling of an old flame, was absent. Instead, caring for Ollie felt like an exhausting performance, a constant, painful reminder of who was not there. She had imagined the cloning process as a restoration. Instead, it felt like a haunting. Ollie would sleep in Oliver's old spot, and Victoria would be overcome not with comfort, but with a searing sense of wrongness, as if watching an actor poorly play a beloved character. The grief for Oliver, which she had hoped this process would assuage, mutated. It was no longer a clean, if painful, absence. It became a tangled knot of mourning for the original, mixed with guilt, resentment, and a bizarre sense of betrayal towards this innocent puppy who was simply being himself. She had tried to circumvent nature, to cheat death, and in doing so, she had poisoned her own mourning process. Part 4. The hardest realization. The epiphany came on a rainy Tuesday, much like the ones Oliver hated. Ollie was barking frenetically at the window. Exasperated, Victoria snapped, "Oliver, please stop!" The name hung in the air, a glaring mistake. Ollie turned, tilting his head. In that moment, Victoria collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. She wasn't crying for Oliver or for Ollie, but for the catastrophic error she had committed.
She realized she had not been seeking a new companion. She had been trying to hire a stand-in for a lost love, demanding a living creature fulfill an impossible role. She had commodified her grief, and in the process had failed both Oliver's memory and Ollie's right to his own unique life. She had tried to circumvent nature, to cheat death, and in doing so, she had poisoned her own mourning process. "I acted under the blinding pressure of grief," she would later confess to a close friend, her voice hollow. "I didn't want to move through the loss. I wanted to delete it. And in doing so, I created a new, more complicated kind of pain." Ollie is not a continuation, he's a highlight, a constant living reminder of what I can never get back. The ethical weight settled upon her. She thought of the surrogates, the dozens of eggs that failed, the clinical, industrial nature of the process that stood in contrast to the messy beauty of natural life. She thought of the countless dogs in shelters, waiting for a home, while she had commissioned the creation of a new one in a lab. The $50,000 could have funded a rescue or honored Oliver's memory in 1,000 meaningful ways. Instead, it had purchased a profound existential lesson.
Part 5. A New Path Forward. Victoria's story is not one of instant redemption. The relationship with Ollie remains complex. She loves him. She cannot help but love the vulnerable, energetic puppy he is. But it is a love being built from scratch, painfully separated from the ghost of Oliver. She has put away Oliver's old toys and bought new ones for Ollie. She is learning his quirks, his love for a specific blue ball, his fear of the vacuum, the way he twirls when he's excited, things uniquely his. She has also begun to truly grieve Oliver. She created a photo album, donated to an animal cancer fund in his name, and finally scattered his ashes in their favorite park, a ritual she had postponed, subconsciously believing he wasn't fully gone. Letting go of the idea of his physical return was the first step toward letting his memory live peacefully within her. Victoria Johnson's painful journey offers a stark, cautionary tale in an age where technology increasingly promises solutions to human suffering. Cloning, she learned, can replicate genes, but it cannot replicate a soul, a shared history, or the ineffable bond forged over time. Grief is not a problem to be solved with a credit card and a lab report. It is a passage that must be traveled, however painfully. People need to learn to live through loss, Victoria says now, Ollie sleeping in his own bed beside her, not Oliver's. Cloning doesn't help you cope with the pain. It suspends you in it, adds layers of guilt and confusion, and prevents you from saying a real goodbye. Ollie is my dog now, and I am committed to him for who he is. But Oliver is gone. And I finally had to let him be gone to start loving them both properly. The promise of science had offered a shortcut through the valley of shadow, but Victoria discovered that some valleys must be walked through, step by heavy step, for on the other side lies not a replica of the past, but the possibility of a genuine, if different, future.